This is the Mettle podcast, and I am your host, Coach Thomann. I'm a former athlete, teacher, coach, and athletic director that switched careers after surviving cancer and a stroke in the fall of 2020. But I'm also a dad of a son and a daughter that were successful high school athletes that went on to college. Now I use that experience along with my ICF coaching certification when helping teams, coaches, and athletes from all over the country. Each week, I will pose a specific question that will help coaches of all types better understand mental toughness. In the Mettle podcast, coaches will learn to help their athletes overcome adversity without being the adversity they need to overcome. Let's go. This is the Mettle podcast. I'm excited about today. I have no doubt this is going to be a fun episode. I don't know. I reached out to my guest here, Nick Zerby. He's had me on his podcast, which we'll talk about in a minute. And I reached out to him. I said, I want you to get on my podcast. And I texted him this morning. I said, give me some details, some bio. Let's get started. And he's like, no, let's just talk. And yeah. knowing me and knowing Nick, like this is going to be no problem. We're just going to roll. But fair warning, I don't know where this podcast is going. I don't know where it's going to end up, but we're probably going to have a fun ride along the way. So, Nick, tell my listeners here a little bit about Nick Zerby.
Yeah, so first of all, I got to start by our pre-conversation. We were talking about you potentially getting worked on both a dental procedure and also colonoscopy,
right.
on the same day or the same.
It was one day, then the next, but yeah. Still, yeah.
Well, so we were talking, they should really figure out as you start to get, like 40 years old, like what are the kind of things they could do to just knock you out and do all in one day. And those are probably the two top things, right? I mean,
well, you know what? They could have an oil change place right beside, right?
Exactly.
You get,
car service.
If we could get the car serviced, get yourself, taken care of.
I like that business model.
I mean, man. I know we're laughing, but if we could find a way, we could find a way to combine all those things and get some things done.
If you think back to like what you had to take care of in your teens, like it was really nothing. Right? And then, like in your 20s, whether you played sports, whether you, did this, that, or the other thing, it was you had to take care of practice and schoolwork. Then like in your 30s, it was work, and then you had a whole bunch of free time if you're like late 20s and 30s. And then as soon as you have kids and get into adulthood, it's like the amount of things that you have to take care of in a day are like astronomical, right?
But the thing is like, I know, yes, if you're responsible.
So I ask myself that all the time. Like,
what if I just didn't care?
My wife and I sit there and we're like, because I know there's days, and we're both very responsible people. Like we try to operate our lives in a responsible fashion. And I'm like, what do some people do that aren't? Because there's days that we're barely making it through, right? Like you're like, I got to get this kid here. I've got to respond to these 10 people about this. I've got to coach. I've got to, figure out this. And by the end of the day, you just literally fall down in your bed and are like, how did we even get through that day? So what is it like? Do you just care less? Do you do less things, or do you just like let things pass you by if you have zero response? If you're not that responsible a person, or if you struggle with that, I don't know what you do.
Well, I mean, I've never been that not responsible guy, so I really can't. If you're asking my perspective, I don't know. But I will tell you what helps me a little bit is I know when I first went into therapy, and it was a whole mess whenever I went, and she asked me, she was like, so. Well, you're talking about things you can't control. Like, how do you determine what you can control and not? And I remember telling her, I said, well, you have to understand the bigger the ego, the more you think you can control. And I was like, I'll be honest, I got a pretty big ego, or I did at the time, a lot big. And I'm like, so the things I think I can control, and the key there word is think, right? The things I think I can control is pretty high, or the things I was trying to control, where that's where a little bit of the insight had to come in. It's like, no, you can't control as much as you think you can.
Yeah.
Right. And trying to do more than that is, that's how you end up in a bad spot sometimes.
Well, you brought that up. You brought that up on the podcast, and then I saw your post this morning, and I was like, you know what? That's what we'll talk about. I saw that you posted something about like struggling to open up the side of your business that is less about the sports coaching and mental coaching and things along those lines as related to like athletics based on your background. But you want to reach more people just in general, right? Like dudes.
Well, yeah.
I mean, so tell me about that, because I was like, dude, that's what.
Well, listen to you going into the whole host. You're being the podcast host, right? Let's tell us like hit the snooze button here. Just hold on a minute. Remind me. Like let's get back to my question. Who's Nick Zerby? Let's get that first. Yeah.
Well, honestly, right now, I'm a nobody. To be really honest with you, I am a nobody as far as like what I've got going on with work. I've got a lot of things going on, and like things that I want to happen. But to be honest, I am like in granny gear right now with some of those things, and that's a struggle for me. I'm a family man. I'm a father of 2 beautiful kids. I've got an awesome wife. I was involved in the sales world for a long time. On the pharmaceutical side, I was a training manager. I lots of things going on in life, not atypical of most folks. And then entrepreneur, started a business with 2 other guys, virtual learning business. And then like after COVID, I started to try to learn a little bit more about myself, and I guess through COVID, I learned a lot about myself, and I said, you know what, I'm kind of done with this career, done working for, even though I was working for myself at the time with the business, I just decided that I had learned what I could learn about that business and about that, that opportunity, and I decided to move on. So for the last just about 2 years now, I've been podcasting for fun, mainly for fun. It doesn't pay my bills at all. I reap not a single cent off of it. Maybe someday I will, but I find the podcasting part of it therapeutic. So the intent for me, and the podcast is titled A Fat Kid Podcast, and a book that I have 200 pages of written material is A Fat Kid's Guide to Confidence. But shockingly enough, I don't have the confidence yet to put it out, right? Like things you can control and things you can't control. I find myself struggling with like, is it organized enough? Does it resonate with enough people? Does it, does it even matter what my life's perspectives are on a few things? So those are the kind of things I wrestle with. And back to being a nobody. I mean, I joke. But yeah, I'm in a space right now where I am kind of stuck in first gear, but not for lack of trying. It's for, it takes longer than what you expect to do certain things that you want to do.
Amen to that, brother. Right. I mean, seriously. Yeah.
So that's it, and that's kind of what I wrestle with as an adult, as a father.
Talk to me.
I have this willpower to do it. So
tell me a little bit about how you. Tell me a little bit about I don't want you to give you the spoiler alerts on the Fat Kid book that I am excited to read, and I'm going to encourage you to go ahead and get that done. But tell me, because anybody watching right now or listening, you're not going to tell, but you don't look like a fat kid.
So I'm not now. I was a former 320 pounder. So I was always big. Like, I'm just shy of 6'3". At one point in my life, I probably was 6'3" in cleats or, high shoes, but just shy of that. And I was always just um, big, like never. I don't know if I want to use the term like sloppy big because I was always involved in sports, always. And funny enough, like most of my friends, especially like my best friend growing up, was a little guy, still a little guy. And so I'm skateboarding with them. I'm trying to always trying to keep up with those guys. Um, and nobody really got as big as me until I don't even know. Like, in high school, we had a couple dudes that were as close to as big as me. I mean, you had plenty of dudes that were taller, right? But
Yeah.
like, you didn't have too many 300 and some odd pounders rolling around in your high school, right? So, you sort of you stood out. But that was good for me, right? Like, I stood out in a way that athletically I was able to shine. I was extremely strong. I ended up, playing football in college at James Madison University, and then once football was over, I decided that I could go one of two ways. I could, go one way is to take care of and manage my health, or two, I could just forget it all and just keep eating, and I'd probably be like 500 pounds. No
Yeah.
joke. So.
Yeah. So when you say you were 320 pounds, some of that was probably by design, wasn't it?
Definitely by design, yeah. I mean, genetically, my dad was like 350 pounds, so he was like a 350-pound farm boy. Never played a sport, never ever played a sport. My mom was actually the athlete of our family, so she played like every sport, coached every sport. She was a division. Well, it was right around Title IX. So she was a Division One athlete, but everything was like a club sport. But she played like 4 sports in college for West Virginia. So she played basketball for West Virginia. She was on the synchronized swim team. I think she ran track, and maybe it was 3 sports. But regardless,
well, that's enough, right? That's enough.
Yeah,
I mean,
but everything was like technically considered like a club sport, and it was this and that and the other thing. But yeah, so yes, it was by design. I lifted a ton of weights. I ended up with some serious back injuries that didn't show up until later on in life. And so, part of like the podcasting and writing a book and doing those kind of things is to help people understand that, you don't have to have a terrible childhood. You don't have to have like to go it through and deal with things. And, you don't have to be like raised in a terrible circumstance or be facing terrible circumstances now, or be on the verge of suicide to have struggles, like normal people, which I consider myself a normal person. Normal people struggle all the time, and it's a matter of trying to find your way through that, or find confidence around that, or talk to people about it. And because life isn't easy. Just normal life isn't easy.
Oh, I don't I don't know that we might think we want it to be, but we really don't. Like that's no fun either, right?
Yeah, and even if you've done a good job with your life, like even if you've done a good job with your life to this point, which I feel like my wife and I have, it's still not easy. Like, so,
no.
I guess, I don't know.
So the podcast, the Fat Kid Cop podcast, what's the goal of that? Why do you, and I know it's you and your wife that kind of do it some, right?
It's tough to schedule my wife. So I found that like, and I'm not good about it either. Like I'll get somebody on the schedule. I'd be like, hey, we're talking to, going to talk to this person. And she's like, that doesn't work out for me. And I'm like, oh, well, all right. So honestly, it's probably taken a little bit more of character towards me. Although I'd love to have her participate more. The goal of it, honestly, there's no goal. And that's funny to say because, everybody, oh, what's the purpose? What's the purpose? Why do you do it? I like talking to interesting people. I like
Mm-hmm.
learning from people. I like sitting down and hearing somebody's lived experience, so that I can apply some of those tidbits to my life. So a lot of times it relates to um, it relates to just how to be a better be a better person, be a better dad, be a better friend, um, physical fitness. But really, it's more just to sit and learn from other people to try to gain a broader world experience of at least what's interesting to me. So,
Yeah,
like,
and at least share that with share it with the listeners as well. So you're saying it's somewhat self-serving. You're like for
it is
yourself.
it is very self-serving for me. I feel like if I can find people that have topics that are at least interesting to me, and that's kind of like one thing that I've always prided myself on is being a jack of all trades. So I like to hear about what other people are into, and what makes their motor run, or how they got to where they are, whether that's positive or negative. But yeah, it is pretty self-serving, but I do it with the intent that hopefully if somebody's listening to it, something in that podcast and that, usually about hour and a half
Right.
conversation will resonate with them, and they'll say, oh, well, I really liked this person because XYZ, or that whatever they said was helpful to me because XYZ.
Yeah. Uh, Take me back to that moment you said, "Hey, I could go one of two ways after was it after college football?" You're like, "Hey,
Yeah.
either I gotta go. I got one of two options. I'm gonna go ahead and see if I can be a 500 pounder, or I need to get healthy." Like, well, it's obvious which way you went, right? But talk to me about that decision and that whole journey because that's a big deal to be able to do that.
Yeah. So I was actually engaged at the time, to not to my wife.
Okay.
And I'm glad that those circumstances didn't work out. Uh, a whole litany of things, man. I mean, I found out that my girlfriend was cheating on me with one of my best friends. So, but prior, I found that out, and then I thought just because it's the right thing to do, and um, I felt obligated to be a good human being, that I'll try to salvage this. I'll get engaged. I'll buy a house. I'll do these kind of things that, I was raised the right way, I guess, to try to, um, to treat somebody the way you would want to be treated, right?
Right.
Despite them not treating you that way at all. So, I go and I do, it wasn't like an immediate thing. It was like I graduate college, I start working in the real world. I said to myself, you know what, I'm so sick and tired of lifting weights. I'm so sick and tired of like training at 5 a.m. every day. And I mean, that's what we had to do.
Oh, that college football grind is a grind.
It's a grind. It is an absolute grind. It's basically your day is committed 24 hours a day. If you're a scholarship athlete, like, they own you. And either you're in for that ride or you're not in for that ride. There is no in between. So it's like I talk to my kids all the time now, the kids that I coach, they're like, oh yeah, I want to go play D1. I'm like, you got to have even Division 2, Division 3, whatever, even a walk on. you've got to have the most unbelievable work ethic and commitment to playing that sport. But regardless, I go out into the real world. I buy a house. I situate the house, relatively close to work, and then I said to myself, like, I'm sick and tired of lifting. I'm just going to start running, and I wasn't healthy. Like, I wasn't healthy at that time at all.
Mettle is a person's ability to face adversity in a spirited and resilient manner. It is a great skill to have for athletics and for life, but it is not something we are born with. If you want it, you have to forge your mettle. And if you listen to the Mental Mettle podcast, you already know that, but not everybody else does yet. So help me out by ordering and wearing some sweet The Mental Mettle podcast gear. We've got short sleeve tees, long sleeve tees, and some super comfortable hoodies. Order online today and you can have your gear in no time. But the best part is that every order helps support the show and helps me spread the message that mental toughness is a trait that can and should be built. So find the link in the show notes, order your gear, and start showing that you know how to forge your mettle. No amount of athletic talent or physical ability can overcome a poor mindset. Anxiety, fear, and negativity will always diminish an athlete's abilities and limit their success. If you're not intentionally developing your child's mental toughness, then they are not reaching their full potential. Mental Mettle coaching provides the individual drills needed to build the positive mindset necessary for success on the court and in life. Contact today to schedule a free coaching session and start building mental toughness in your athlete.
I was early 20s, so it was like going out, you're drinking, you're carrying on with your friends. Work was good, but I didn't like flip that switch immediately, and it actually took me quite a while. So like I lost a lot of weight, but I lost a lot of muscle tone, a lot of strength,
Right.
a lot of and I really wasn't healthy. Like I just in general wasn't healthy. I bummed cigarettes and stuff like that. I was never a smoker, but I would be bumming cigarettes and just, doing whatever you do.
It's kind of like when your wife says she doesn't want dessert, but she eats half yours.
Yeah, exactly.
That sort of thing. Yeah, I got you. I got you.
Yeah. So I'm not like, I look back at that time and I'm like, man, I wish I would have taken much better care of my health at that time, but I didn't really have I didn't really have a reason to, because I was sick of it, right? Like I was sick of that grind. And then I started to have some serious back problems and some serious issues, probably beginning like 24, 25. They didn't really start. It was just like I was really starting to recognize because my skeletal muscle strength went down so much that basically my own support system was weak. So all of these structural damage that had happened to me from poor lifting technique, and just being an offensive lineman started to catch up with me. And I would probably spend in about a 5 to 7 day increment a year, 4 times a year, like spread out throughout the year. So,
right.
so basically like a total of a month a year. I couldn't even get off the floor because my back would go, and I'm like 24, 25-year-old kid.
There's nothing worse when you mess up your back. It's invalid, man. But to have that happen to you at 24, 25,
right?
Having been a college athlete,
right? Exactly. So, did I realize the mental toll that took on me at the time? No, not at all. I just kind of dealt with it. I would go back to work. I never really.
Well, wait a minute. When you said dealt with it, you mean you didn't deal with it?
So correct. I didn't deal with it.
I think that's a misconception that guys, since we're talking about this, it's that misconception of, I'll deal with it, which means you're not dealing with anything. You're just doing nothing. Like you're just letting it build to be a problem.
Yeah, 1,000%. 1,000%. So I never complained about it really. I would find strategies to just keep moving forward despite, I couldn't sit still for, I couldn't even sit at a dinner table to have a conversation and sit still, right? Like every 5 minutes, I'm switching, switching positions, moving my body. My legs would go numb. I'd have to stand up. And my wife, I'm sorry, she wasn't even my wife at the time. I go through this, this breakup, and my wife and I have a really pretty cool story. We actually met through work. And, ultimately we were very, very good friends, and we got married after that. And that's a whole other story, but she's absolutely awesome. I would highly recommend, like, if you're going to choose a life partner, choose somebody that you have met as a friend, and then, you're able to coalesce later on in life and really make it about your family.
If they don't start as your friend, it needs to develop into a friendship. There's no doubt there.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. So anyway, she and those around me got used to just me being like half in, half out of dinner conversations and things like that, because I would just get up and be like, I gotta go walk around, and so I sought every treatment, like, I sought every treatment. I would stretch. I'd do this. I'd do that. I saw a chiropractor. That didn't work. I sought out pain management. And I remember, so my father's a physician, and he took me to one of his buddies who was a pain management specialist. And, I was maybe a year into my working career, and I'm like, I'm in sales. I said to the guy, like, I can't take pills. I can't manage this that way. I was like, I've got to figure out how to manage this some kind of other way. And so we tried cortisone injections. We tried bilateral nerve burns. I did like 3 sets of those down either side. It was a major issue at a young age, at a very young age. And then I sought consults for spinal fusion surgery I finally had my last straw probably at like 26, 27 years old. And I saw 3 different consults at 3 different hospitals, just, one at Reading Hospital in Pennsylvania, where my dad knew all the surgeons and everything else. So I knew that could be trusted. Then I was living in the Lehigh Valley area in Pennsylvania at the time. And I knew a bunch of physicians up there, mainly because I was involved in the pharmaceutical world. So I got some recommendations there. And then I also sought out one of the best surgeons in the country, a guy named Patrick O'Leary, who was at Hospital for Specialty Surgery in New York. They're like the best of the best of the best. And all 3 of the diagnoses aligned. It was like, we can give you a multi-level spinal fusion surgery at 26 or 27 years old. And I remember looking at Patrick O'Leary. He was the final person that I saw, and he was a very, very nice guy. And I said to him, like, if you're me, what do you do? And he's like, I'll operate on you tomorrow. That's not a problem. He's like, but I don't really want to. And I'm like, well, then what do you do?
What are we doing?
He's like, well, I can give you, and I forget exactly what the odds are, but they were terrible. It was something like, I can give you a 60% chance that I can give you 50% pain relief, but I can give you a 100% chance that you're going to be in here in the next 10 years doing this, and every 10 years thereafter, and you're going to have your whole spine basically fused by the time you're like 65, 7 years old.
RoboCop action, And I mean,
so I didn't, back to your point, I didn't seek out anybody's thought on this. I just internalized it myself and was like, well, I got to figure out a way to fix this. And so then at like 27, 28, 29 years old, my buddies were getting into CrossFit. some guys that I played college football with, and I'm looking at them and I have all of these notes like written down of these emails. Like it's kind of cool to look back on every so often.
Yeah.
And I remember emailing them and being like, you guys look great. What are you doing? And they're like, oh, we're doing this new thing called CrossFit. And it's great. You'd love it. And I'm like, no, I can't do that. My back, my this, my that, the next thing. And I still remember one of my really good friends, Sean Set Cabbage. I played football with him. He was this guy who came in he's a nasty athlete, but he came in as like this lean swimmer guy. And he was shorter. And he was a really nasty football player, but he was just way undersized. And they put like 50 pounds on him in college. And
Mm-hmm.
and he was back down to being this lean guy. And he just writes back to me. He's like, get your fat ass into the gyms, or.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple of years to like embrace that fitness. It took me a while until I could come to terms with the fact that I was going back into the unknown. I had to refine fitness. I had to refine like a passion for it. I had to find a love for it. And I went into it with the mindset that this is like a last resort thing for me before doing any of these surgeries. And I got to see if I can like fix this way. Because I tried everything else. Like,
Yeah.
you go to a physical therapist, and back then is different than the moniker is now. It was like, let's do these little tiny exercises to get you back. And I'm like, come on, dude, like this isn't going to
We need something serious.
yeah, I'm like this, just me doing this and that and the other thing, these little tiny exercises is not going to help me like regain strength, confidence, and the ability to be able to not lie flat on my back after,
Right.
for months at a time, every single year. I mean, so that's where my fitness journey began, and I'm still on it every day. And I can say since I started CrossFitting and returning to squatting, deadlifting, it took a turn. And if you want to explore that, we can. It took a turn like about 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, which I had to kind of redo the same thing. But my lower back, I haven't had a repeat MRI since, and I don't have any lower back pain at all. None. Zero.
Yeah. There's so many things there, Nick, that you say that are so applicable to so many people. Like when you started by saying, oh, I can't do that. And I can't do that. You see those. I say that all the time. Whenever somebody tells you to like get your fat ass in the gym, come do this with me. I do this all the time with friends of mine because I've been a runner. And I practice jujitsu now, and it's like I'm always telling, like, "Hey, go for a run with me. Hey, do it." And I always get that answer. I'm like, "Oh, I can't do that." I'm like, "Well, I couldn't either. Day one, right?" And I think that's what people skip is they love to see a transformation story, but we love the before and after pictures, right? We love them.
Totally true.
And we don't see the daily grind that it takes. And also you said you had to build the love for it. It's a daily grind, but your motivation is like, we all want this end of act 2 movie thing, where it's like, oh, we get this resolution that we need and everything is like an upward trend and it's a straight line after that. And that's not how it works. It's not how it works. And it's, we have to change that mindset to people around, motivation, around progress. It's not easy and fun, but it's worth it.
It's a really valid point. And I mean, over the last 2 years is probably the only time I've actually sat down and analyzed, hence kind of writing the book, starting a podcast. Just, the book started, and a lot of it is the intent about injury and overcoming that and finding confidence with regard to that. But it's funny because I'll still go back to a place where I'm like, dude, that happened, 20 years ago or whatever. Why are you bitching and moaning about it now? Well, to your point, I'm not bitching and moaning about it. I had some time to actually reflect on the, what I've gotten through. And I try to approach my life a little bit differently. I try to approach my life differently now because of that experience. Because you can't internalize everything, you can't handle everything on your own. But there is that fine line between, and I was saying this to my wife the other day, like there's a fine line between being a total wimp and being a total hard ass. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah.
And it's
well,
like
I think
being
in
able to
different
figure it out. So
in different situations, we are different. We have different attitudes and different actions towards different people, and it's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is.
So what? Talk to me about. Well, what I love to say is when we put ourselves through, because CrossFit is intentional adversity. Right? You're doing something hard on purpose.
Correct.
And I don't care what your intentional adversity is as a human, but I think you need to have some intentional adversity.
I agree.
And the reason I think that's important is because then when life throws that mandatory adversity at you, things that you have no control over that just happens, as you said, life is hard. I feel like you're better prepared for it.
1,000,000% agree. And I've been doing a ton of listening. I listen to other people's podcasts all the time. In fact, I'm nuts about it just because I'm trying to learn what it is about the human condition that allows you to have a level of toughness about you, which I definitely know that I have, and I've never been like a soft kind of person. Sometimes I'm like a little, maybe I'm a little too rigid or a little too driven, but like this last year or two has enabled me to get a little bit more in touch with my own emotions and understanding like what drives me to I don't know, to keep going, to keep trying, to keep trying to press forward, because when you do reach that adversity in your life, what is it that gets you out of bed every day? What is it?
Yeah. I think, and when we talk about mental toughness and having that and building it, I think that it's also misunderstood that is just like a 100% genetic thing. Like, and it's not. You can build it. You can, like, are some people just naturally born with a little bit more resilience? Sure. Just like some people are born with a little bit more height or a little bit more speed or whatever. Right. It's the same thing. But you can always, well, you can't build height, but you know what I mean. But you can
learn
build,
how to jump higher.
Yeah, you can jump. Yeah. So I think that I'm always trying to convince people when they see me doing some things that they're surprised with. And people probably see you getting into the CrossFit and doing these things. They're like, I don't know if I could do that. And I'm just not, it's not my thing. Or they watch me want to run or do some jujitsu and they're like, I just can't do that. I'm like, I can be the biggest wimp. Trust me, ask my wife, but I'm trying to build this stuff. That's the whole point. And it's possible. It just takes intentional effort to do it.
It does happen. It happens quite often. And I don't know, sometimes I feel, I feel we're in a weird spot right now because if you do things like that and if you are if you are the person who's willing to try those things or put yourself through harder things, sometimes I feel like you're judged or people perceive you as like, oh, here comes, Zerby with this new age, mumbo
I get it.
jumbo, whatever it is, right? But like hunting, for example, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about hunting. Like I've been hunting my entire life.
Same here. I mean, yeah.
My whole life. And I remember my dad, and whether he knew it or not at the time, but I remember my dad taking us out as little kids, teaching us how to hunt, teaching us how to fish, going camping, being outdoors, things like that. And we always used to laugh because he would do things as like Spartan as possible. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we're going to make this cushy, but I don't think he was doing it to, I don't know, and I've talked to him about it. My dad's not like a wide open person. So, he didn't face the same struggles that we have now. Like the only concern about pulling you away from things was television, and like television, that was really it. Right now it's phones, video games, everything. TVs. Yeah. Like it's
and you can take it with everywhere. You take it with you now. That's the problem, right?
Exactly. You don't have to like sit and be at home. And so I don't know if the intent was the same, but it was like, I want to teach these kids how to be outdoors, how to do this. And like, we would laugh because my dad would bring literally like a pepperoni stick, for like the entire weekend, and a couple bottles of water. And like, that's it. Like we'd be in a tent, or we would go hunting all day, and he'd bring like one sandwich per person. And that was it. Like, you shared a bottle of water, and then, would be out traipsing through the woods and doing this and that and the other thing, be cold and miserable. And, that's not really that fun for kids. But at the end of the day, I've been doing like that kind of stuff on and off, for forever. And so although it may seem new age or in vogue or whatever, I think we need to get more back to learning how to do or teaching how to do. And if you don't know how to do, that's fine. Like ask somebody that does and have them help you out. Right. Like,
I don't care what it is.
That's the intentional adversity stuff, right? Like,
absolutely. And I think what you were going at is you have to be this new, like you have to be a little bit, or anymore. It feels like you have to be very careful about the image you project, because you're going to turn somebody off because, well, I'd listened to this guy's podcast about all this stuff, but he's a hunter, or this guy's talking about doing CrossFit. CrossFit people are all like that. They all want to if you don't have if you don't know about anything about CrossFit, just ask your CrossFit buddy. He'll tell you everything about it. Right. That type of thing. Right. Yeah. So it tells people, and I think that when you are one of those people that is doing some of these things, you're like, you start to hold yourself back. You're like, I'd like to tell people more about this, or really, but I got to hold it. But all right, so I'm pausing the interview with Nick just a moment. Trust me, it's coming right back. He's got more to say, but I wanted to interrupt right here because early on, Nick mentioned a Facebook post that I had made earlier that day, and we never come back to it in the interview. Although it definitely influenced this interview, because you'll hear us, and more in this next section coming up. You'll hear about the tough guy idea and how men struggle a little bit. And we're not saying women don't, but Nick and I are guys, so we are looking at it from a different perspective. And Nick and I, he does the CrossFit, I do jiu-jitsu, we both hunt, we do these things that would easily allow us to call ourselves tough guys. If you want, you could make that your persona. You could do all these things, but both of us have, through, different stories in our lives, both have a same kind of an idea on that you have to get in touch with, your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings. And it's not just about having this tough guy persona. And the reason I bring that up is, and what this Facebook post I mentioned was about, I'm starting some different coaching. Most of you know, if you listen to the Mettle podcast and you know much about my business, Mettle Coaching, you know that most of it's geared towards athletics. And I also do some stuff with educators, and you'll hear me talk about this. But I'm really starting to lean into another part of my business. And I want to start doing some coaching, and I have already started it on this date. I've already started some what I'm calling tough guy coaching. And it's, it's a play on the word tough guy because we act like we do. We act tough, but we know every guy knows that there's more under there, but yet we don't talk about it. We act like it's not there. So if you, as you listen to this, or if, ladies, if you have husbands, sons, fathers, things like that, it doesn't have to be ex-athletes, but I know that that's a lot of what are going to be listening to this. But any guy out there that is struggling, I would love to have a session with him. Honestly, if you contact me, you can see my email, my information in the show notes. It's coachtomann@gmail.com. Get a hold of me. I will do that. I will do a full hour-long session with you for free just to see how I can help, so I can start to get you on the path of opening up a little bit. And maybe, we will talk then and see, is this something we want to pursue? We will worry about the monetary, and we will worry about the housekeeping part of it later. But I have been called recently, it's been something on my heart to really reach out there and, reach out to guys and let them know I'm out here, and I want to start, from one tough guy to the next. I can help, and I can coach you through some things with your family, with your business, your relationships, all those things. And I really want to help with that. So, the worst you can do is walk away with a free session and either, pick up something great or realize that all this stuff is nonsense. Either way, it doesn't bother me, but I want to try and help where I can. So listen to this next section on the podcast with Nick. I cut in here on purpose because we really get into some of the things that he's talking about, being a tough guy and but still trying to open up about things. And it's just, this next section of the podcast is a little bit more raw, a little bit more real. And you can tell there's a lot of thinking done by him and by me. And I think there's a lot there. And I want you guys or ladies that willing to share it to consider this. Shoot me an email, give me a call. Let's see what we can do. So back to the interview with Nick Zerby. When you're talking about your book, because I feel this, because I'm writing mine right now, when you're talking about who's the audience, who am I going to reach, whatever. Like, one of the things I started to coach myself around is the idea, because I used to feel like I really struggled for a while, feeling very useless, like nothing I did mattered and things like that. And I really started coaching my own voice and coming up with this idea of one person. And when I sit down to write, when I go walk into an auditorium to speak, and it is my mantra to say one person. Like, if I write this book and I feel good about it and I reach one person, it was worth it. If I show up to this speaking engagement and only one person listens, the ripple effect from that person could be worth it. Right. But you have to start thinking about things like that, or you will let negative thoughts just like spiral down.
You're absolutely right. And for the longest time, I was very, very driven to write. I would get up and I'd write between 4 and 7 a.m. And I was just, whatever came, I was just banging it away, right? Like, just very, very driven to write. And I've never written a book, so I don't know if this is common, if it's not common. I have no clue. But for me, I was cranking it, and it would just be all kinds of thoughts, ideas, in regards to my own feelings, my own perceptions, lived experience. But then what I would see from the world around me, right? Like, a lot of it has to do with coaching as well, and parents, frustrating parents, and the way the way people act, on sidelines, and the way they approach how their kids are being coached, or they think that their kids are like the absolute superstar and should always be treated that way, and they're the fostered experience that and curated experience that parents are creating for their kids. So I'd write a lot about that, and then I'm like, man, then I'd sit there and I'd reevaluate it, and I'm like, okay, this is me dumping how I feel about it, but is that too much for the, is that too much for the world? Is everybody going to think that I hate them? But I don't. It's just, so you start doubting yourself about whether or not, like, does the world even care what you have to say? But then I go back through it and I'm like, I don't really care if the world cares what I have to say. Like,
and that's like a whole. So you want to talk about confidence there, right? And I'd love to get into that, because
let's go.
That's the second part of your book. We talked about you being a fat kid.
Yeah.
What does a fat kid or a former fat kid have to tell everybody about confidence?
Yeah. So what does it have to do with confidence? What does a fat kid know about confidence? And kind of how did I get there? I sort of never let on my entire life, because externally it never seemed like I struggled with confidence, right? I would be, and it's funny because I talked to my parents about this over the years, and when I was writing this book, they were like, what do you mean, like, you struggled with confidence? And I feel like you put on a mask, because you're this kid who's overweight, you're like way bigger than everybody else, and I've had 100 people come up to me and be like, well, I never saw you that way, or
you're an offensive lineman, you're in the trenches, you're the tough guy, right? Of course.
Yes.
So that's, you have to put that persona out there.
Yeah. Or even my mom, I would talk to my mom about it, and she'd be like, I don't understand. Everybody, loved you, and you went to, and this is funny. Like, I went to the prom 6 times as a kid, because it was like 2 years in advance of senior year, 2 years after. She's like, everybody loved you. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. Like, I went as friends with all, a lot of these girls. I don't even think I ever dated a girl that I went to the prom with. Like, maybe one, right? like I was in a relationship. But she, so her perception was, well, people loved you. And I'm like, yeah, I get that. I get that. But it was, do you really, do you, just because people love you on the outside, or you're able to speak in public, or you're able to organize people, or you're able to, you don't struggle in conversations, does that mean that you don't struggle? And the answer to that's a hard no. Like, it means that I've spent a lifetime trying to figure out ways about myself, to reinforce myself, I guess, in a positive fashion, to be able to find confidence in daily situations, right?
And I will jump in here and tell you that the kids and the athletes that sometimes appear to have the most confidence have the least.
Right.
That's not a new idea. I'm throwing it out there, right? But it's all part of the show. And to look at, as a coach, as a parent, looking out at your play, and you probably recognize that now, probably really helps you as a coach working with athletes now that you're like you're not fooled by it.
Good observation. And I think it does. I think I need to pay more attention to it. I think there's some things that I do inherently, but yeah, I guess I would consider myself a specialist in that, because you spend an entire lifetime doing it. Like I'll even look at myself in the mirror now, and it's never really it's not a vanity thing, but like I'll look at a picture and the first thing I look at is like whether you can see like a stomach on me still.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
first thing I look at every single time. So I skip past sometimes the beauty of the moment, like with the kids and whatever. Like that's the second thing I look at. The first thing I look at is like, all right, well, do I look like I'm healthy? Do I look like I'm in shape? And that's like, that's screwy, but like, that's a tough thing to get past.
Well, and I think I think our today's culture and just the world we live in has conditioned us to believe that, oh, that's a woman thing you're doing. And it's not.
It's not.
Right? It's not.
No.
Guys do that too. Guys will like, oh man, I look like crap. Right? And then like, so I think that it really speaks to the idea. We know women do that because women talk about it, but guys don't talk about that stuff, right?
Yeah.
We just don't. We're like, I'm just going to deal with it, or not deal with it.
Not deal with it.
Not deal with it.
Not deal with it. Or you spend all that time internalizing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Again, I don't know where all we're going here, but I love the conversation. Other than I do think that it is. Yeah, I don't know, Nick. It's just I want to be able to, as you mentioned my post that you saw this morning. I want to help try to break that stigma and break that barrier we have for guys to open up and realize it's okay to realize that you're not as confident as you're supposed to be, as we're told we are. That culture, especially if you grew up playing football, man, right? Never let somebody see you hurting, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a really good tie-in because what I've observed, at least over the last like 4 or 5 years, is, you've got a group of people you've got a group of men in this world that live undoubtedly ridiculously tough and complicated, or maybe they're uncomplicated, but tough lives, right? Like if you're a coal miner, your life is tough, dude. Like it's tough. And I don't know what that circumstance looks like, right? I don't know what it's like to be pushed up against the wall and that's your only option to be is like a coal miner. Yeah. That's it. Right? To me, if I was a coal miner and I didn't like it, I would say to myself, I'm going to figure out a way how to get out of here and go do something else. Right? But there are circumstances in people's lives that don't allow them to make that choice. Right? I don't know what that looks like. I can see you in there as Derek Zoolander with the. I've got the black lung. I've got the black lung pop.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, but go ahead.
So you've got people that are undoubtedly tough. They live tough lives. Whether that's by choice or by circumstance, I don't know 100%. I'm sure it's a mix of both. Then you've got military folks that have done some incredibly tough and valuable things. And then it's like you got everybody else, right? Like you got this mishmash of, right? Yeah. You've got this mishmash of folks that have jobs that are wide and varied. They may be teachers, they may be real estate agents, they may be,
Oh yeah, so it's like I didn't serve in the military and I'm not a coal miner. I should just shut the hell up.
Exactly.
Like what do I have to complain about?
Correct. Right. So you've got, hundreds of millions of other people that aren't on these kind of extreme ends. Yeah. Right. So, but then if you talk about toughness or you talk about toughness or lack thereof, it's perceived as like, well, what are you complaining about? You live this, this great life. You do. So, to talk about that, that large swath of people that need help, they need help in some way, shape or form. And, I lean towards the fact that people should be resilient. They should be tough. They should be they should be able to navigate their way in, especially men, should be able to navigate their way in difficult situations. They should be able to take charge. They should be able to be leaders. And there's things that you can do to lend to that. But if you're not good at that, or you weren't raised that way, or you haven't had people influence you over the years, coaches, parents, friends, well, then get some help with it, right? Like, get some help with it, but you don't have to grow a beard, and say that you're tough. And like, I don't think that I'm tough because I've been shooting archery my entire life. And like, I'd love to bring more people along on that, right? Like, I'd love to show somebody that I can butcher deer with my bare hands from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I know all about it. And I'm in blood up to my elbows, but I'm not saying that I'm tough because of that. I want to show you how to do that, right? Like, that's where I sit with it. Like, I'd love to help more people understand that they can be tougher, but they don't have to put on a persona that they are some kind of, hard ass.
Oh, I would love nothing more than to have you come over, have me show you how to butcher a deer, cook it up, and then also at the same time, talk about our struggles as men, and be like this, have this conversation that we'd be like, dude, like, is it okay that we talk like that? I might also like hand you a medium rare loin chop and be like, okay, now I want you to close your eyes and let's think about this moment and what it means to you. Right. And I can be both. And I want to be both.
Yes. Same.
Yeah.
Like, having been exposed to like some of the toughest hunters, that I've ever met, well, you can be both. You can be ridiculously tough. You can do ridiculously tough things. You can be a military operator. You can be, but yet you can still have a side to you that, thinks, feels, evaluates. You don't have to just be like driven constantly, because I feel like if you're driven constantly, you're not a real person,
And I'm really gonna put it out there. If you're wanting to be I know we're leaning into the guys a little bit, and this is perfectly fine here on this one, but like, if you want to be a father, a husband, a boyfriend, a leader, whatever, and you're not getting in tune with some of your own thoughts, you're doing a disservice to those you're trying to lead and mentor. You just are.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've seen them. You've seen sort of like the false leaders, or I used to work in the corporate world, and there's so many people that I respect in the corporate world, but there's so many people I'm like, how did this person get to where they are? And somebody's like, they're a great leader, and I'm like, are they? Like, based off what? Like, I don't know, because like my grandfather used to say, I don't think some of these people could fight their way out of a wet paper bag.
Yeah.
Like, and you've got to be able to do that. I think, like, you've got to have some resiliency and some stock and some hardiness to you. And if like that's not part of your character now, figure out ways to make it part of your character.
And I think it's also good to realize that while you look at the CEO or this guy that you're like, I don't know, the answer you're looking for might be from the guy who's walking in to take your trash out and is getting through stuff every day. And he might have more answers than somebody you think you're supposed to look up to.
100%. 100%.
It's not so I don't want this to feel like you got to be this or you got to be that, because my wife and I talk about this all the time. I want to be like my wife's little golden doodle. Look, he's happy. Nothing Nothing phases him, right? He's like, doo doo doo. I mean, when it storms, is he scared? Absolutely. And he has no problem coming up and curling up beside you and being like, hey, I'm scared. But then the next day when it's gone, he's like, okay, what are we doing? Let's go. Let's go have some fun. Like, I mean, I know that's an oversimplified idea because we don't have somebody like giving us our food and our shelter and we have and he, cause buddy, he doesn't have any responsibilities,
My
but
dog's the same.
but I still want to try to understand that a little bit.
I think you can find yourself at this, at least for me, I'm trying to find myself at this annex of, I know how to do difficult things. I love to do difficult things. And actually I started writing another, you know, what might be a book is, like back to the hunting example, so many people do not know how to do that at all. And either you're vilified for doing it or you're revered for doing it, but yet, like, I'd say 9 out of my 10 friends don't know how to do that. And I don't think that that's, rare. And I've never found it as like, oh, I'm better than you because I know how to hunt. In fact, for a long time, everybody was like, oh, you're redneck, you're this, you're that, you're the other thing.
Mean, I'm from Southern Illinois and I now live in Tennessee, so it's no big deal. But you're from Jersey, man.
Well, but by way of Pennsylvania, so now Pennsylvania.
Okay. So there you go. There you go. Oh, you're right. Okay, so I didn't know that, but you're in Jersey now.
I'm in Jersey now, yeah, and it's like I don't, I've got a really good group of friends, and there's great groups of guys, and which I consider many of them very tough, and they're tough in their own right, and I appreciate that about them, but like, if you're stuck in this space where everything's comfortable or you like to complain about everything, which, I may be perceived as complaining about everything because I went through some shoulder stuff and, right now I'm kind of jobless. So it's like, oh, well, what's he doing? Well, I'm trying to really set myself up for a very unique opportunity. And it's hard, like fighting through that every day is difficult, right? Like I'm in a nutshell, and we can talk about it or not, but I'm trying to build out a software business, which I've never built before, that essentially would pay you in the form of long-term investments for managing and taking care of your health.
Yeah.
And so to knock on doors, to reach out, to, be told no 100 million times, or not even no, just sounds great, but I don't know how to help you. There's a level of resiliency that, like I said earlier, I'm stuck in first gear, but I keep going back because I've got to get to second gear, right? So there's a level of resiliency there that it is.
And I think, and just to coach you for a minute, man, to call yourself jobless is not like you have a job. It just doesn't come with monetary benefits right now. Right. And it's like, we have to change that, because if you're doing something you're passionate about, people should be so lucky to be in that situation where you are doing something you're passionate about. And honestly, you must have some sort of, income to be able to do that. Right. Sure. What kind of great situation is that are you in? And I think that's something I'm sure that you have to work on to get past. And but it's a real thing. It's a real thing.
Yeah, it is. But it is, and it's a matter of managing your emotions around it, and also managing your time. And I'm actually planning on, I've been researching, and I'm planning on going back to acupuncture school to become an acupuncturist.
Yeah.
Because I found some super value in that later on in life.
Yeah.
That,
I think, it's progress. And I said this, that trend line, it's not a trend line. It's this and this and this and up and down. And I think so long as you can look like that trend line is going up, I think that's what you're trying to do. And
Yeah.
yeah. So Nick, let's put a bow on this.
All right, brother.
Sum it all up. What do you like? I know we've been all over the map here talking about it, but what's the takeaway from Nick Zerby, the fat kid with confidence, and what's the tie it all up? What's the advice you got?
Yeah. I just think try to learn from others through lived experience. You know, I often find myself in judgmental spots where I look at potentially what people are doing or not doing, and then I find myself judging. But I then try to reel myself back and say, well, maybe I just haven't learned something from them yet. I'm not perfect at that at all, but I would say, first of all, in a health, aspect, take care of your health. Like primarily, above and beyond anything, take care of your health. Mental and physical health, right? I would even say physical health before mental health. But if you're in a spot where you can't get up out of bed, or you can't do something, or you can't get past something, it's tough then to take care of your physical health. But I think taking care of your physical health helps you take care of your mental health.
I don't think those two are, people make those things disconnected, and they are not.
And they're not. No, and that's really what I'm learning over time. But I also think, like, on that notion, take time to learn from people. Take time to have conversations. Take time to involve yourself with people that you don't even know. I mean, I didn't know you, but 6 months ago, and I feel like we've now been able to banter and develop a relationship. It just happens to be recorded and in public, but being able to get to know people at more than a level of just like you're a friend from sports, or you're a friend from work, or whatever, you're involved in something that I'm involved in, but you really don't get to talk to people and hear their stories. So I would say in summary, that's kind of it. Just listen to people, listen to yourself. And just like you said, it's a long and winding road, but we live very short lives, so try to make them as full as possible.
Yeah. I think when you talk about judgment, I mean, the second we start judging somebody, the second we stop learning from them.
1,000,000%.
And you can't control that others are going to judge you. We talked about that, but I think there's so many things we got to get past. Worrying about people judging you, worrying about people thinking things about you, worrying about how it's going to look. We got to get past those things, right? If you're going to really grow and change. And kudos to you. Also I was going to give you this off air, this advice, but I'm going to go ahead and so 2023, I committed myself. I said, I'm going to write my book, and I got it about, I would guess 75% done, 200 pages at least. And then through some real soul searching and some thinking about it, I didn't like it. I didn't like where it was going. And it was a good reason I didn't like it. Like, I was like, it didn't feel like me. It didn't feel like it was true to me. And I restarted. I restarted at the top of 24, and just like a couple weeks ago. And it is because it's me now and it's more authentic. It's flowing so fast. I have no doubts I'm going to get it done this year. And you know what? That's okay. Right? Like, I think that writing is a process, and it wasn't a loss to have writing for a year, to write for a year and then scrap it, because I'm not scrapping it. I found a way that I didn't want to write my book, which is good.
That's really valuable, and it's valuable coaching. And it's great to hear that, because it's like, I had a woman, she was the only person that read the whole thing. And her feedback on it was like, I really like this. And I don't know her from a bar of soap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I don't know her at all. And, I'm not paying her to tell me to like it. I was paying her to just kind of put my thoughts together. But she's the only person that's ever read it. ever read like the manuscript version of it, cover to cover.
And if I could encourage you here, you got a great story. What a disservice that nobody's gotten to read it yet. So that's my encouragement. Not even my wife. That's my encouragement to you is find somebody's going to want to read it, and it's going to change somebody, and I'm all for that. So. Yeah.
All right. So here's my ask of you then. I'll send you the manuscript. You can be the second person to read it.
I would love it. All right.
I would love
it. Good. So there you go. See, we're doing a little coaching. We're doing a little accountability. All good things here. It's fantastic on the Mental Mettle podcast. Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. It's just a great conversation. I hope that my listeners take something from it. I'm sure they will. But yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being on. I'm your host, Coach Matt Thomann. This has been the Mental Mettle Podcast, and remember to forge your metal.
Thanks again for listening to the Mental Mettle Podcast, produced by Coraggio Media, sponsored by QuickCut, a video management platform for every level of play, and by Mental Mettle Coaching, helping athletes learn to face adversity in a spirited and resilient way. The Mental Mettle Podcast is created each week to help players develop more mental toughness, and that is something that will help all of us. So help me out and like and share the Mental Mettle Podcast with your friends. Until next time, keep forging your metal.